Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Gentlemen, Dominic Rolling Solo here today, covering a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is men's mental health. Now, it finally seems that men's mental health is starting to get its rightful day in the sun, and all it took was a global pandemic to shake our shit loose to realizing that maybe suppressing, compartmentalizing, bypassing, downplaying, rationalizing our emotions are not long-term strategies to our mental and emotional well-being. And there's a few stories that I want to share with you that I think will really start to resonate with you and provide new perspectives on how important it is to take your mental and emotional well-being seriously. And I've had a chance to see this front row center over this past month as we've been doing this Mentally Tougher Man Challenge for the first 31 days of this year, every day in January, a challenge around, meditation, breath work, journaling, reading, push-ups, these kinds of things, sharing something that's vulnerable about you. And I've had a chance to witness how many guys have started to open up about the most vulnerable parts of their lives, get support from one another, feel like they're putting this big bag of rocks that they've been carrying around on their back down to be supported by other guys. All of a sudden, there's freedom, there's power, there's courage, there's new confidence in this space where there is space to address your mental and emotional well-being. And that also goes to show the importance of community, right? In not lone wolfing your life. All right, let's dig into a specific kind of mental health phenomenon that I do not think is getting the kind of attention that it needs to be. One that I know that you have experienced either personally or witnessed on some level. And while I'm certainly not qualified to talk about it from a medical standpoint, I am someone who has the opportunity to oversee many people who live high stress lives, who have ended up in burnout, who are in transitional periods, who are in painful periods of their lives. And I've witnessed this theme over and over and over again. And it's this one. As soon as you downshift from your busy, chaotic, frenetic, stressful, high-pressure life, you get sick or worse. All right, let's get into a few examples of this. I was talking to my buddy Jim the other day, a guy that I grew up with. Jim is a lawyer, and he's now an in-house attorney for a corporate organization, but before that, he was doing like big-time law for, I think it was like intellectual property rights across a series of media, and he was always on call, like sometimes burning the candle at both ends. When the client needed something, it was always last minute. Sometimes it was 6 or 7 days a week. Sometimes, not getting home until after everyone in the house was asleep, way after midnight. He would always get the job done. And as soon as he would take a vacation, he would get sick. Can you relate to that? I mean, how many times I used to work in the retirement services industry, right? And this is where we sold for Prudential. We sold 401k and pension plans. So we're constantly dealing with people who are at or nearing retirement or just shortly into retirement. How many stories have you heard about the person who's worked his or her ass off, retires, and within a month they're dead? What's up with that? What's going on with that? I've had a couple of clients. One client who I worked with about 3 or 4 years ago at the age of 35, busting his ass working for a medical device company. I think it was like 6 days a week, 12 or 13-hour work days, couldn't turn it off. He was so good at his job, but couldn't set up boundaries for it. And he knew he needed to leave, so we worked him through a transition of leaving. I'll never forget those first 10 days after he left, he fell into this like deep state of exhaustion. He's like, Dom, I feel like I'm depressed. I've never felt like this before in my life. I'm always a really can-do, optimistic guy, always would get the job done. Dom, I feel like I'm sleeping 12 hours a day. I don't know what the hell's going on. And within a month, he suffered a stroke. 35 years old. This dude was like a high school state wrestling champion, good shape, like he still is in good shape, not quite as good a shape as he was in high school, but he hadn't let himself go that far. Bell's palsy, suffered a stroke. Half his face was frozen in place for weeks. Fortunately, he recovered. A few years later, I ended up meeting Terry Kelly, who was a senior vice president of Morgan Stanley, one of the top financial advisors in her company. She was rated as one of the top 10 women wealth advisors by Forbes in all of Arizona in the year of 2020. And Terry had done 5 Ironman competitions, completed them, right? Like unbelievable shape. And the reason why she found me is because after a period of 2 years of buying these big books of business that she bought from retiring financial advisors and knew that she was taking on a Herculean task of integrating those books of business, after 2 years of going hard and finally getting all the systems and structures in place, transitioning the other 2 advisors out, hiring other people to take the weight off her shoulders, finally had gotten over the hump. And I think it was like a week later, suffered a massive panic attack in her shower, thought that she was having a heart attack and dying. Got to the doctor, and finally the doctor asked her, like, what was her life like leading up to that point, and was able to diagnose the fact that she had suffered a massive panic attack. And the reason why I'm talking about this today is because last week, one of the men who's closest to me in my life, who's asked to remain anonymous, so we'll go with back to the well again. I think this is the second week in a row we've gone back to the name we give anonymous people on the show, Rick. Rick, after dealing with like about a month or a month and a half of some of the most tremendous stress he's ever experienced in his work, where he called me up on a Friday night and said to me, Dominic, I don't know if this stress that I'm experiencing is good for my health. Like, I'm scared. I'm scared what may happen to me. And talked through the possibility of making some significant changes in his life where he would reclaim the power and take it back from, I guess, from relinquishing what he felt his power to be and causing him as much stress as he was in work. And that's as much detail as I can share with you. And he had truly, like, energetically turned the corner. I could feel him different that night. Checked in with him on Saturday, checked in with him on Sunday. Like, he was a different man because he had made a decision that this work, the stress was no longer going to bother him. On Tuesday, I get a text message from him. Dom, I'm in the hospital. I fucking need you. Call me. Holy shit. Right? I mean, you get a message like that, especially from one of the most important people in your life. It sends a ripple of terror through your body, not knowing what the hell could be going on. So I took this deep breath and let some of that energy dissipate. And what actually surprisingly came to me was this feeling of pride that he would call on me in that moment, you know, his moment of need. And he's called on me in other moments of need in his life, but like this felt particularly, powerful. And I wanted to step up for him in this moment. And thank God he did. And when I called him, he was in a very emotional state of not knowing what was going on. It turned out that he had had an aneurysm in his right leg that had gone all the way up into his stomach. And if you know anything about aneurysms, they can be quite severe. They can kill you. In his case, he didn't know if he was going to lose his right foot and leg. Can you imagine that? Going about your business like any other fucking day, and then all of a sudden, faced with the prospect of being one leg down for the rest of your life, just like that. And that's where he was. And fortunately, it's been about a week. It's actually been exactly a week since this happened. He had some of the greatest surgeons on call. The hospital wasn't overflowing with COVID patients. Like, you know, he was able to get his work done. He has an incredibly supportive wife, and was able to get the surgery done. Was able to is healing and is at home now and working through a long recovery process. It's going to take him months physically to recover from, and he's got a long road ahead of him mentally and emotionally. But again, here was a situation where something snapped very shortly after the turning of this corner of, like, he was stressed out and then turned the corner and then relaxed and then bang, the aneurysm hits. Now, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional, right? Like, I don't know this stuff. I don't know the science behind this stuff. All I know is that I've had a number of experiences over and over again where I see people who are in incredibly stressful situations who can remarkably hold it together and perform at the highest of levels, only to suffer some pretty significant consequences when that downshift occurs. Now, let me be clear. This is not about scaring you about downshifting, right? At all. Because the alternative is keep going at the pace you're going, keep fueling your system with anxiety and fear and burning the candle at both ends and see where that leads you, right? Like, that's not the solution either. But what I'm here to tell you is we're fucking fooling ourselves, guys, if we think that this shit isn't festering and growing in power inside of us that can sabotage us at any moment and take from us the very things that matter most, right? Terry is a wife and a mother of 2 young boys. The thing that scared her the most was leaving them all, right? She thought that she was dying, leaving them in a moment's notice. Rick is a husband and a father of 2 young children, thinking that he was going to leave them behind, or feeling like he would become a burden in the short term for the family as he learned how to recover from this, this injury that could have taken and amputated his leg. Think about how this stuff is affecting us, guys, and how often we do take the road of suppressing, of ignoring, of compartmentalizing, of bypassing, of downplaying or rationalizing that it's not that bad. You don't know. You have no clue, no concept of how much this stress is actually taking its toll on you. One of the things that I was proudest about, this was about 4 or 5 months ago, I think I've spoken about this podcast before, was when one of the men in the mastermind, so it was Mark Melvin who did the podcast here, Mindfulness for Men. I think it was episode around its 180s or 190s. Go check that out. It's been a very popular, very downloaded episode. Mark said to the men in the group, "Hey guys, I just wanted to let you know that I hired a therapist. I've been in therapy before. Here's what I'm going in for now. And I'm just curious how many of you guys in this group have been in therapy." And it was amazing. Like, over half the group had said, yeah, including myself. Yeah, I've had a therapist. Like, we've stigmatized things like mental health and therapy because it's some sort of like indictment on your ability or your mental capacity or, holding shit together. Wrong. Having a therapist is one of the smartest, most intelligent things that you can do. Why would you ever hold shit in? Why would you ever think that you're the expert on navigating some of your internal stresses? There are people who are fucking trained in this stuff, guys, who've dedicated their entire lives, who have seen it all, or most of it, who can help you like find the bottom of a solution in a second that would take you years of your life going down the wrong path to diagnose yourself, right? Like, we've got to start thinking about this stuff differently. You've got to stop lone wolfing your own personal development or your own mental and emotional well-being. Clearly, I've been hit by the Mack truck or hit by the 2x4 numbers of times, right? That's how I ended up in Sex Addicts Anonymous. That's how I ended up with Porngate. That's how I ended up, over and over again. And I got to tell you, I have an army. I have an entire village of people working on my mental and emotional well-being. It takes an army to keep my system running clean, if you know what I mean. So why would it be any different for you, right? And I want you to get really clear on the fact that the pressures, the stresses that you are dealing with, if you do not have capable, qualified men in your life, women in your life, trained professionals in your life who know how to meet this stuff and help you navigate through it, then you are accumulating a pile of TNT that all it needs is a spark to detonate. And the bigger that pile grows, the smaller the spark that's needed and the bigger the boom. That's the bottom line. And because you're listening to this podcast, I care too much about you to let that shit happen. So what I want you to do is take this episode as a wake-up call that, yes, you may be, quote, holding it together. You may be performing at high levels and getting your job done, but on a deeper level if you're paying a price for this. And it's time to either go get yourself a coach, come join us in the Facebook group, right? Like, start to talk to these other guys. And in a few short weeks here, you have an opportunity to formalize some of your work as a group of men are going to be entering into our digital mastermind, which is going to be a program for guys who want to formalize their inner work, invest in themselves, do something every single month, and I'll be leading that. But for right now, take the opportunity to sign up for our last free workshop that we're going to be running for quite some time, which is on January 27th. It's called Unshakable. It's all about helping you to build your mental and emotional capacity. I'll link that in the show notes. You can register. I think we've already got a little over 115 men who have signed up for that. And if this episode kicked up something for you that you want some support on, that is what the Facebook group is for. Come in there right now. I'll put the link in the show notes. Drop a picture of yourself that shows a side of you that you want us to see or that allows us to get to know who you are. Or just come in and share your story. Ask your question, ask for the guidance or support that you're looking for, or just share the thing that you needed other people to hear. That's why we are there. That's why we are here. That's why we are building this community. Because guys, it is time to stop lone wolfing your life. It's time to stop lone wolfing your own mental and emotional well-being. So come join us in the Facebook group, share your story. Come join us on January 27th for the last free workshop I'm going to be running for a while called Unshakable, Building Your Mental and Emotional Capacity. And I hope to see you there soon.